How we traveling there, neighbors? Ian with eTrailer here, excited to bring you the MORryde X-Factor Crossmember Kit. We're going to go through all the installation, but let's get into a few features of that first. Hopping under the trailer here, we're taking a look at that crossmember. We see quite a few of these fifth wheels coming in with bent hangers at the end, so you'll start to see binding and extra wear on the bushings within your spring hangers. The intention of our crossmember here is to run from one hanger all the way across the vehicle to the other hanger, giving more rigidity to those hangers. We see very often from turning that the hangers get twisted or they get kind of bent in, and again, it's going to cause all those premature wear issues. So to avoid that, this crossmember is going to help just kind of keep that set of hangers in place, not only as you're headed down the road, but most importantly while you're turning, because that's when you're going to have your most torsion force on those. And same situation with the one that works on the equalizer. It's just giving more rigidity to the frame right at the axles. So it's really just a great upgrade if you're looking for something that's going to keep the longevity of your axles and all those hangers really nice. So that X-Factor crossmember is going to be able to be done on the ground. We don't have to have it in the air by any means. It's a few nuts and bolts that hold it all together. Extremely easy to access, even with the wheels on and everything together. We just have it apart, number one, so you can see it, and number two, because we've got the rest of this wonderful suspension system going on. And I have to say, to pair it with the X-Factor is probably the route I would take if I was going to set up the exact same way. So wanted to mention that. And back to that install on these, it's again not that difficult, but if you don't happen to have the tools, or you just watch the video and you realize that's not something I want to try to tackle, go ahead and check out that dealer locator. We can help get you a trained professional that can throw that on there for you. But for all those DIYers, let's go ahead and hop into that install and I'll walk you through that process. First thing we're going to be doing for this X-Factor kit is putting up the bracket that will hold those cross members up, and that's going to be mounted to the back of the wet bolt. So if you're not doing any spring upgrades, which in this case we're putting on a MORryde system for this particular neighbor, so that's why we've already got all this apart and these wet bolts out, but you can just remove the nut off the back side of the wet bolt, and then we'll get all that attached, and I'll show you how to do that here momentarily. But first we're going to get our wet bolt on this one driven in, so I'm just using a socket that's slightly smaller than the head but big enough to protect our Zerk fitting on the outside. We do want to make sure there is a grease hole in the center of these wet bolts. We'll want that either at the 9 o'clock or the 3 o'clock position, because if we've got it at 12 or 6, there's going to be too much pressure and not allow for that grease to get in there to the bushing. So go ahead and get this driven in, just making sure those splines set correctly. One thing we'll want to do before putting the bracket up there is just take a little dab of red Loctite and throw that into our nut. That way it goes onto the bolt. And we'll take our bracket, making sure that both of these holes are not only at the top but easily accessible, because we're going to have more hardware running through that. And we'll take the provided large black washer and throw that over the bolt, and then our nut, and we're just going to leave that finger tight for the moment. Now, to get these hung up onto the brackets, we will need to take this additional bracket that's going to be living on the back side of the hanger here, and we'll just feed the bolts straight through, and then add the nut, and we'll do that on both of them. That in place, we will need to then put up our bracket that takes these two long grade 8 bolts. That will come around the back, but we need to put these spacers onto those bolts first, and then we'll just feed that from behind, lining up the two holes in the bracket and adding our nut here. And then we'll take two 1/2-inch sockets and go ahead and get those snug down. Now this does have a torque spec as well. You'll just check the instruction manual. After we've got it snug down, we're going to come back through and torque that. Make sure you draw that down nice and even between the two. We want to avoid bending that bracket. Now we need to put the center sections of the cross member up. You're going to find that the wider section of the two is going to have these slotted holes in the center, where the skinnier part is only going to have these smaller bolt holes. So what we'll need to do is figure out which one of our shackle hangers is the larger. So it should just slide directly into it, and then we'll have 6 bolts and nuts that will go into the ends here. You will want to start with that larger section first because the smaller one actually sits inside of this. We're putting up with those 6 bolts. There's going to be a flange nut on the inside for those. Just get that into place, and we're only leaving those finger tight for now because we'll need to make adjustments putting up not only the center section and all those bolts, but the other end as well. So now we've got that larger part up, and we're going to take our other section, get that slid into the hanger and the center here. What I like to do is hold all of that with one hand and then take 4 bolts, and I'm just going to start 2 on this and then 2 in the center to kind of hold that in place while we get the rest of them all lined up. Then our first ones we're going to be putting in the center are going to be the furthest away from the edge, and then we're also going to go to the very center ones here. So any that you can find, since each camper is going to be a little different, it's got a lot of options for mounting. All right, now we've got all of our hardware in place and at least on there with a few threads, so we'll come back through and just get everything snugged down. You may have to apply a little pressure upwards just to keep everything in line if you're having any issues with that. But once we've got those all snugged down, we'll come back and go through the torque spec. And we'll come back through now with that torque wrench and just triple check we are to the specification shown in the instruction manual. And with all that torqued down, that's going to be the completion of our installation here. Of course, if you did have any other hangers that you'd want to be putting on, now would be the time to go ahead and do that. So that way you've got your full system on. This neighbor's only got the 2. We've got this one and then the one at the rear. So this one's done, but you would repeat the process the exact same way regardless. And then one thing I did want to mention, if you do happen to have an equalizer in the middle opposed to the MORryde system like we're putting on this neighbor's vehicle, it's going to be just about the same process of putting all that on. You'll just want to make sure you check those instructions and get a clear idea of what you should be doing different. And that's going to be our look at an installation of the MORryde X-Factor Crossmember Kit on our 2018 Grand Design Reflection. My name's Ian with eTrailer. Appreciate you watching.